start with a new topic for classification technique. That is the method of linear discrimination. So these are the chapters which you may go through from these textbooks. Now, the policy of using discriminant functions for classification I mentioned earlier also. It's quite simple. That means you have a set of functions. For example, here it has been shown that the functions are named as a GI of the corresponding input feature vector X. So it is giving a numerical value, usually a positive real number, real value. It could be 0 also sometimes. No, sorry, it's not positive. It's a number. It's a real number. It could be positive or negative, whatever. And then the thing is that you have to choose the maximum of this functional value. So it's a linear function, and you consider the functional form of a linear function in this form. So the maximum I mentioned, I meant that the functional value which gives maximum out of all this set of functional values, that for that function, the class which is is denoted by that function, that class you should assign. That is the discriminant. Name of the discriminant function comes from that. So it is discriminating a feature vector among all these classes, and it is tagged with a particular class, and using this policy only. And you can see that the linear form of the function is given here, where the parameter of this linear function that you should note or notation, it's a weight vector, and there is a constant term, because this operation is actually the linear operations if I go by the strict definition of linearity. But still, in a linear function, we have also a constant term added with the corresponding linear operations over the feature vector. We'll see that how actually this is also accommodated to make the whole thing in the true sense as a linear operations by augmenting the feature vector. That we'll see later on. But just to try to understand that here the term linear should be considered in this context, that actually there is a constant term which is added with the linear operations over the feature vector. So these are the coefficients of this function. That means this Wij are the coefficients of the ith discriminant function. And if your feature vector is of d dimension, then for the d-dimensional feature vector, you have this corresponding operations. So you can see that you can see that feature vector is a element of a d-dimensional space. That is how a feature vector is represented here, and xj is the corresponding value at the jth dimensional attributes, and wij is the corresponding linear coefficients. I hope this is clear to you that for a linear function, this many number of coefficients or parameters are required to define a particular linear function. Okay, so let us proceed then. So with respect to this, then of course, this discriminant function, it does not mean that it has to be linear. It can be also it can take also other forms. It can be a polynomial form, even the non-polynomial form. So in the other very popular form is a quadratic form, where you have more number of parameters, because in a quadratic functions you have all possible combinations of attributes, pair of attributes, product of pair of attributes, that also becomes a term in this combination, and the coefficients of that term is required to be mentioned when it is a quadratic function. So the form of the quadratic function is expressed in this fashion. I hope you have understood also this part, that if I consider, so for a particular function, these are the parameter sets. As usual, this Wi is the feature vector. So what is the dimension of Wi? What should be the dimension of Wi? Can you tell me?
Same as that of X.
Pardon?
Same as that of X.
Yeah,
D
that
cross
is right.
one.
And in the matrix form, I would simply write Wi is a column vector. See, all are represented like a column vector here. So Wi is of D cross 1 column vector. And what should be the dimension of this particular factor in the quadratic term? So this is a quadratic expression. You can say it takes care of all possible quadratic combinations, pair of attribute combinations. So what should be this dimension? It's a matrix that you understand.
D cross D.
It should be D cross D. That's right. So you can also make a dimensional check, because you know that this is a scalar value. This quadratic function, functional value should be a scalar value. So this should give you a 1 cross 1 dimensional value, which is a scalar value, and that you can check. X transpose is 1 cross D, Wi is D cross D, and X is D cross 1. That makes 1 cross 1. So this dimensional matching is sometimes you should do while understanding any equations, and it's a kind of I should say, without going deep into the explanation part, from the formulation itself, you can find out whether this formulation is at least consistent with the matrix multiplication operations. And this is, of course, the coefficient. So how many coefficients are there? So you have D square here. Then there are D, and this is 1, right? So you have D square plus D plus 1 number of coefficients for a single quadratic function. And if you have multiple number of classes, the more than one classes naturally. So if you have k classes, you have to multiply with this k. That is a factor you should multiply, right? So this linear function, the advantage of linear function is that it requires less number of parameters, and it's also simple. Linear in form has some other advantages for algebraic operations. Quadratic function, it requires more storage and time, but no, it has more power in discriminating the input arrangement, input vectors. So let us consider the problem of two-class classification. Now that is the base condition, base problem on which we will be discussing mostly, and then we can extend these concepts to multi-classes also. I have started with the framework of the multi-class classification. Now let us consider the two-class classification problem. So here, one of the first simplification that you can see that actually you do not require two discriminant function in this case. So it is sufficient if you have a single discriminant functions which can be expressed like as a combination of these two. If you assume that all your discriminant functional value, they are giving positive, as I mentioned in the very first case. So then there are two situations, because both of them are positive, and you are also considering that they need to be you are assigning the functional value, which one you are assigning to that class where the functional value will be giving should be maximum. there. That means the greater among these two, g1x and g2x. So naturally, when gx is greater than 0, since g1 is tied up with the class c1, so you should assign the corresponding feature vector x to c1. Otherwise, if it is less than 0, then you should assign it to c2. Now, if they are equal, no, it is a case of ambiguity, so we may not take any decision there. So if I expand this term of g1 and g2, we can write in the linear form. We can write them also, and we can see it becomes again another linear function. Linear in the sense the way we have defined that there is also a constant term which is added with it. So finally, the functional form becomes a single linear functional form, and there you can see the discriminant function, whether it is positive or negative based on which the classes are assigned. So that is a kind of scenario. And also you have a very less number of parameters in this scenario. You have only d plus one number of parameters. So we may consider that in the feature space, if you define a hyperplane, say gx equals 0, in one side you will have its positive side where the input samples of one particular class, it occurs to that side, and the other side it is a negative side. So suppose this is the kind of two-dimensional case that is that has been drawn here. So gx in a two dimension, it will be a straight line. As you understand that gx equal to 0, it represents a straight line, and a straight line divides the two-dimensional space into positive half and negative half, right? Suppose say this is the positive half, and say this is a negative half. Now it depends the way this function has been written gx. Say if I just negate all the coefficients, then this becomes the other half becomes the positive and the other. So it is not it is not very you should not say that that you should understand from the functional functional points from the functional values perspective. Now one of the things that would be of your interest. So suppose I give you say some value, some point in the space, right? So how do you determine that in another way you can also say that whether this point is in the same side of the origin or not, that also is another kind of definition. I mean, irrespective of sign definition, if I say that there are two halves, in one side the half containing origin and the other half the half without containing origin. Okay, that is also another kind of geometric definitions of this this kind of subdivisions. And naturally, if you put to the value of x there, then sign of this coefficient determines what is the sign of the half which contains the origin. I hope that is clear to you now. Okay, so now you tell me that if I give you this hyperplane, how do you compute the distance from this point? Suppose this is a point, but how do you compute a distance of a input point from the hyperplane? Do you remember from your school level knowledge of coordinate geometry in school? You have studied these things in the high school itself, in your higher secondary class 12. Coordinate geometry was there. Can you remember that part? How do you remember? How do you find out this particular coefficient? Suppose the form of gx is this.
You can take the normal vector and calculate the distance along the normal vector.
Which means, so what is the normal vector here? What is the normal vector here? You are right, but what is the normal vector with this representation?
I think W is the
yeah, this coefficients itself will denote a normal vector. Okay, this will denote a normal vector, and right? So this W is the normal vector. And what you are doing, as you are saying, actually this is the expression. It means that, say this is the point. So okay, so if I take this vector and compute the corresponding, no, if I, no, sorry, this yeah, this is the point. And if I take this vector and compute the corresponding, no, projection of this vector, projection along W, that is what will be there. And then you should get this particular thing. So which means that if I use the sorry, this is the distance of origin. I'm sorry, this is the distance of origin, right? So if I put the origin, so so the vector of the, you know, if I consider this this one, which means that right, just yeah, from the coordinate geometry it is clear, but no, I'm trying to understand from the vector's point of view. This is the thing, and we are projecting it along this. Now, if Gx passes through the origin, then right. So
Sir, if U is the point and we are trying to find the distance, then it should be W transpose U plus W naught divided by W transpose W, I guess.
yeah, that is right. I mean, that you are correct. So for the I mean, if it is the point U, then it is W, use the functional value at that point. That is WT transpose U and W naught, and divided by this norm W. You are right. So that is what from our school level geometry we have learned, and we can prove it easily. So I just get confused with this vector representation. We'll come back to this with my subsequent drawing, this line diagram. So I'm just trying to find out, suppose this Gx is passing through this origin, then you can measure this distance. But no, I got confused somewhere. So we'll see, and we'll proceed. So this part is Gx greater than 0. So my point is that, so in this case, of course, no, if you assume that the W naught is negative, if you assume W naught is negative, then your origin is in the negative half, and that is how we are, we are indicating this region. But no, it depends upon the coefficients of the W naught. So this is the distance. Let me remove this diagram, right? So this is the distance what we are measuring when we are considering the distance from the hyperplane, and we can extend it to more than 2 classes also, the same thing, this policy, of course, and only samples of the class lies in the positive half, then no, then we can consider they belong to to that particular class. So because no, that is the maximum, that is the maximum value. So if I consider always the difference of two discrete functions of the corresponding classes define a hyperplane between any pair of classes, then naturally the sample which is lying in the positive half of all these hyperplanes, that would belong to that particular class, and that is why it says that it has to be positive half on the hyperplane. So now this is the idea of the discriminant function. Now another way you can look at this particular classification, it is the same formulation, but no, here we can represent it these computations like a like a neural node that we will be discussing later on also when we discuss about artificial neural network based models. So, but in the very unique model, you can see it's the same linear classifier which is represented in this form. And here you can see that this computation is nothing but it is the computation of the W transpose X and plus W naught. Now, when this W consists of these weight vectors. So the model is that it's like a neural model. Here, these are the input feature vector. These are the components, and these are the in a neural node. You are multiplying weights with the corresponding input feature attribute value, and then you are taking the summation of them, including this is called bias term. This W naught is called bias term in this particular context. So you have a bias and you have the net weight. Sorry, not net weight. I should say you have the weighted sum of the input, and then also these are the weights. So weighted sum of the input input attribute sets and attribute values, and also the bias which is added, and then you get the corresponding net input response. So we call this response as net response. And the classification task is to find out the sign of this response, as you did in the previous case of two-class classification. So if this sign is positive, then you assign a class, say, 1. And if the sign is negative, then you assign a class, say, -1. So in this perspective, we are considering, because this is a sign function, as you understand, sign functions usually +1, -1, and 0 is a bit dubious. You may include or you may not include, but in this case we will consider only +1 and -1, and we will not discuss about the 0 case. Okay. So this particular operation also can be considered, as I was mentioning, that we can convert it into a linear form. We can consider it a pure linear operation when we augment an additional dimension to the input. So this is the additional dimension, right? This accounts for the additional dimension. So we consider as if there is a d+1 dimensional place. So here it is n, of course. Here the dimension is shown as n for x. So we have n+1 dimensional feature vector. However, the n+1th dimension always contains a value 1. So sometimes this representation is called also homogeneous representation of the corresponding feature points or corresponding geometric space, geometric points. Now this operation, this linear function operations becomes truly linear operator with respect to W and X, because now you can express a linear operator as simply W transpose X without requiring the constant term. Is it clear? What was the problem with the constant term? If I use a constant term here, why I say that is not a true linear operation? Can you tell me? If this constant term was there, suppose in the previous representation, this is not this representation, and you have this W transpose X and then plus W naught. This is what you are. Why this should not be considered as linear in that case?
Alpha F plus alpha.
Yeah, the superposition principle does not hold here. I mean, linear combination. I simply, if I say I take two input feature vector x1 and x2, and say I add them, superimpose them, or add them, say any linear combination, as you are saying alpha 1 plus alpha 2 x2, right? And then if I apply this operation, this functional form, that means this W2x plus W naught. If I apply on x1, if I apply on x2, then add them. Now that will not be equal to the application of this functional form with this input, right? when that is why it won't be linear if I have this constant term, because you can prove it. No? This is W1 transpose X1 plus W naught plus this is W2 transpose X2 plus W naught, and if I add them, W naught will be added twice, right? And if I consider suppose X1 plus X2, then it will be W transpose X1 plus X2 plus W naught only. So they are not same. So that is why this augmented dimension gives you that leverage that you can make it truly linear. So in that case, you do not require this. So if we include them, you do not require this representation, and then you can say that this also holds. That means linear combination of input also will provide you the same linear combination of output at this point. So this is the linear operation, but this operation, this fz, as you can see, this is a nonlinear operation because you are computing its sign. As the definition from linearity, you can see that this is not a linear operation, right? So this classifier can be also interpreted. See, the same thing what we discussed using discriminant functions, one single discriminant functions for two-class classification of problem computation. The same thing is modeled in this particular kind of perceptron node. This is called perceptron node-based computation. In a single node, you are performing this classification. Again, it's a kind of linear classifier. So the problem of your classification problem is that you need to find out that W which will be giving you the minimum error with respect to a label data set. That means you have certain set of label data set and you have their class labels which would be either +1 or -1, and the parameter which minimizes the misclassification given the training set. No, that is what you would like to compute. That is what is your problem of designing a linear classifier with respect to this two-class classification problem. It's the same problem. We will be discussing about this problem now. Right. So that is we are mentioning. So let me have this. See. So this is what is the problem, that given a label data set where labels are denoted by yi and corresponding input data set xi, we need to compute the optimum W minimizing classification error. Is this thing clear? Any doubt? So what are the labels here in this problem? If I say class labels, how the class labels are given? Can you tell me? In what form these class labels are given? See, in a two-class classification here with this model.
0 and 1.
No. That's what I was asking you. You see that output.
-1 and 1.
-1 and yes. There are two classes, but their labels are -1 and 1. It is not 0 and 1, and as we considered earlier. Okay, fine. So numerically, because you are approximating a numerical function, so it should be very clear what you are trying to achieve here in the functional as a functional output. Okay, let us proceed. Right. So let us consider the interpretation of this. Now, since it has become linear, you can consider the hyperplane passing through the origin. No, I was trying to draw because of this simplification. This interpretation becomes much more simpler here. As you can see that this W, which is a normal to the hyperplane geometrically, it shows this because any point lying on this hyperplane, it is orthogonal to W, and that is why W transpose X should be equal to 0. Okay, do you agree? And that is the property of W. And once again, just to see that whether you have you understood it properly. What is this form of X? Suppose I give you a input. Suppose there is an input value say x1, some value x1, x2. I could have used some numerical value also. Anyway, let us consider it's a two-dimensional input space x1, x2, and the label is given as say 1. Okay, so how this x should be represented corresponding to the x1, x2?
1, x1 and x2.
Yeah, but now we are considering 1 as the third dimension. Huh? So it is x1, x2, and 1. It's okay. I mean, what you have said, that is also correct. Only thing is that no, the whole thing has to be consistent with your mathematical definitions, right? So this is x. That means it's an augmented input data with the augmented dimensions, and that's why you are considering this linear operation. That means what is the form of W in that case? How many coefficients should be there? How many coefficients for W?
It will be W1, W2, and W0. In 3.
Yeah, right. There will be 3 coefficients. So W1, W2, you're right. W2 and W0. So this is what we discussed, and this is how. So you take the dot product of these two, or you can consider the matrix multiplication of W transpose and X, and the value what you get, that value should be greater than 0. That value should be greater than. That value should not be equal to 1, right? That is not we are not going to make a function approximation here, but we would like to get W such that that value should be greater than 0. Sorry, greater than 0 because the level is 1. Right? And when there is another, suppose this level is -1, then that value should have been less than 0. And it should be satisfied for all such training data. If you get such a W which satisfies for all such training data, then your at least for the training data set, your classification error is 0. Okay.
About this, sir, about this class level 1 and -1. I mean, are we trying to refer to positive? I mean, whenever the number is greater than 0, are we calling them 1? And whenever the number is negative, we're calling them -1, something like that.
Yeah. So that is a level, because I told you the perspective of the corresponding functional node of a perceptron classifier. So both the problems are equivalent by by making it in that form. So there directly you are getting class levels from the function itself, functional point itself. And when you say a discriminant function based classification, you naturally understand that you are also assigning a class level 1 or -1. There you could have used many other level, but no, to make it equivalent, so we are considering it is 1 and -1, these levels. Okay, so this is the interpretation that actually when you make a projection of X on W, that would give you the corresponding this distance value. So this is what, but no, it is not W. Projection means it is a unit vector. So you have to take the dot product of X with respect to the unit vector of W along this direction. Is it clear? Right? So you are computing this when you are performing this operation, which means you are also computing the dot product of X with respect to W. So which means W, I mean this distance if you can compute when you are performing this operation XTWs. When you are normalizing it by the magnitude of W, then you are computing this distance. Which means you are computing the distance of X from the hyperplane passing through the origin in this case. Is it clear? Okay. So this is what I mentioned. and this is the distance you are computing. And finally, you see that this is the thing. Yeah. So this is the distance that you can compute when you are performing this particular operation. So if you compute W transpose X, you are getting a factor which is proportional to this distance, and that factor is basically the norm of W. Right. Now consider another point x prime, and which belongs to the other class. And naturally, it would be in the opposite side of X, and which means that W transpose X should be less than 0. So in that case, you can consider the negative W, and you are taking the projection on that, and there also you can get a distance. So this is the problem from the geometric sense, that if I give you a training data points with these class levels, now we are trying to find out a hyperplane which separates these two data points, right? So this W transpose X equals 0 is denoting that hyperplane with this in this case. And if a solution exists, then the classes are called linearly separable. So it is not that there is a guarantee that this hyperplane will exist. That means your data could be such that let me take a consideration. Say you have some of the positive samples, and there is also a negative sample. So positive samples are shown by, say, crosses, and negative samples are by, say, dash. Now, you may not get any hyperplane separating them here, right, in the two-dimensional space. But suppose you have a positive sample like this, and negative samples, say these are the negative samples, then you can get a hyperplane which separates them. Okay? So you may not get a so when we get a hyperplane which separates them, that means your training error is 0. Then we say these two classes are linearly separable. So can you tell me that a criteria by which you can find out this this condition, that whether two classes are separable or not, linearly separable or not? So these are the two scenarios. So this is one kind of input arrangement, and this is another kind of input. This is another kind of input arrangement. So here my claim is that it is not linearly separable. With this input arrangement, you won't find any straight line which will separate these two sets into two different hubs. So when it how can you check it? Any idea?
Sir, if we can find the boundary, then we can check if it has any classification error or not.
What is meant by boundary?
This line that separates the two classes, the plane, sorry, that separates the two classes.
I mean, say if you you are trying to say, if I can find out a straight line which separates them, then we can say they are separable, right? But if I don't find them, can you say that? Suppose I don't find. Suppose I have found this, and I will say that they are separable. But for this, I don't find any straight line. But does it guarantee me? Does it will it tell me in full confidence that no, there is no such plane, no such straight line for separating them?
So if I have if I consider two sets, set A as the positive examples and set B as the negative examples, and if closure of set A and closure of set B are non-overlapping, then there may exist a hyperplane between them.
Yeah. You are you have given right answer, but no, can you tell me that no, geometrically what does it mean, this closure? What is definition of the closure? In fact, closure means some operation you have to define. How do you say a closure of a point set? We don't say closure of a point set in that way. Convex cell. Right. It should be convex cell. It is better to call it convex cell. So, you know that convex cell is the minimum convex set which contains this set of points. And in the case of 2 dimension, it is the minimum area convex polygon, which will contain all these set of points. So if 2 convex sets, they are non-overlapping, they are convex set, they have a region, they have a bounded region, and if they are non-overlapping, then we say they are linearly separable. Is it clear now? So you can see that in this diagram, if I, that drawing convex polygon, there are algorithms for that, or getting convex polygon. And if I take the convex polygon, for example, for this one, most likely this is the shape, and for these two, say it would be trivially a straight line for these two. And as you can see that they are intersecting, right? So that's why it is not linearly separable. But in this case, if I consider, say, this is the convex cell and this is the convex cell, and they are non-overlapping, which means there exists a hyperplane between them. So that is the condition for linear separability, right? So with this, let us try to formulate the problem in a more convenient manner, and as an optimization problem. So one of the tricks that we'll do here, we'll perform some kind of data normalization. Already we did one kind of data normalization. That means we have augmented an additional dimension to make the input operation, linear function operation as a true linear operation, linear functional form as a true linear operation. That is the kind of thing we did earlier. And now to make it uniform when we are going to compute it, what we are doing, so the input of the class whose level is -1, we will simply invert the input. We'll make it -x. So in that case, for every W, for every computations with the W, it should be always positive. You agree? So this is my new definition of the input feature vector. So Y is the new definition. So always, all my samples, it will lie in the positive half of W. So I did not check that whether it is basically positive or negative. Even, of course, I need to check that, but no, I'm saying that this becomes an uniform definition. So I will always get a positive value. And when I am defining an error function, so I should not get a negative value. So if I get a negative value, that is the advantage. If I get a negative value, that means it's misclassified. If I get, for any input sample, if I get a negative value, it is misclassified. So I will simply negate that one to make it positive, and that sum of all those cases, all those values will define my error value with respect to this W. Now, Y misclassified means also W transpose Y is negative. Now, it is the same thing. I said Y misclassified, or I could have written W transpose Y is less than 0. We will consider only that those Y's, those samples, and if I add them, then I will get the corresponding error function, corresponding error value with respect to W. So it's a function of W, so I am writing it as, say, JW. Is this thing clear? So what is my optimization problem in that case? My optimization problem would be to minimize, to get that W, which will be minimizing this particular error value over the input data set. Okay. Is it clear? So this is what that error function, and this criteria we call it perceptron criteria. As you see that this particularly this optimization criteria is also valid for the perceptron classifier. I mean, I said that this two-class classification problem using discriminant function as we have defined, it's the same as the perceptron classifier's classification problem when you consider the class labels as 1 and -1. So this is your objective. You have to obtain that W which minimizes the error value, error functional value, which is JW. So one of the optimization techniques, a very popular technique for this kind of minimization is that you can iteratively move towards the direction of local minima. So you can start with from any point and in the corresponding parameter space, and you can compute the corresponding gradients at that point and move along the in the opposite to the gradient, that is the in the opposite to the steepest gradient direction with certain, so it is the direction which matters, and with some kind of policy of moving, that means what should be step of movement, that is a kind of policy matter, right? But you have to move, that is the principle. Key principle is that you have to move opposite to the direction of gradient. The direction of gradient shows you the functional value, increase of the functional value. So you are moving towards the decreasing direction of the functional value, and you go on doing these things till you get a particular point where there is you get almost zero gradient. That means you are not really going to change much this kind of weight vector. So which is like this. You can start with an initial vector, then compute the gradient vector, and then as I was mentioning that you should update your weight by moving towards the opposite direction of the gradient, which is minus grad JW. And eta I is a kind of a step size, so the amount of step that you should take in that directions. So as you are moving closer to the gradient value, you should consider that you should decrease this step size, otherwise you may jump over to the minimum, and then you are moving, I mean it will be basically oscillating along that directions. So this is a positive scale factor, because it shows the step along this direction, and we call it also learning rate. So with respect to this particular error function, if I apply this partial derivative computation, it is very simple. You can see that with respect to W, you get only the minus y's, like so. So if I use this simple computation minus eta I grad JW, of course, this error function I have denoted by JPP is a subscript here you have used, because there are other forms we will be discussing later on. So you can see that it is a very simple computations. You are simply adding the corresponding input feature vectors in your training data set, and it is giving you a resultant direction along which you should move, and then you are updating it, and you go on doing these things. You go on doing these things till this update is you require minimal updates. It converges. That means the change in weights, they should be very small. They should be within certain limit, some specified limit. Then you can stop. So this is how this algorithm is considered, and this could be taken as a constant, or you can have also some other policies. Now, this is not the only form of error functions. There could be other forms of the functions. I mean, all should be consistent with our definition of misclassification. That means you can have a quadratic functions. That means you take the square, and in this case, the advantage is that it is not continuous. Sorry, JQW is continuous, so very smooth in the boundary, but you can get stuck there. That is the disadvantage. And for long feature bitwise, it will dominate. So it will add some certain kind of bias to that. So it is an error. So another error criteria is that you can consider strong misclassification cases. That means there could be, you can allow certain kind of negative values with certain tolerances because of noise, etc. So only if your value is less than 3, that means you are shifting your hyperplane towards the direction of the negative half. You are shifting it further. In this case, I mean both. You are shifting both towards the negative half and positive half, but equivalently here you are shifting your hyperplane towards the positive half. I'm sorry. Here it is towards the positive half. So you have a stronger linear separability. That means at least the gap between these two are ensured with this kind of shifts. And if you take the gradient of these functions, you get these expressions. You get these expressions. So, for example, if you take the gradient, I hope you have understood how the gradients are computed in the matrix form. In the gradient computation also follows similar logic what you did for the one-dimensional variables. For example, in this case, the gradient with respect to W will be first as if you are computing the, of course, the matrix multiplication, dimensional check, etc. has to be there. So you can see that first you are computing the gradient with respect to this, that means which is say 2 of W transpose Y, and then with respect to this. So which means Y into W transpose Y. So if I say the gradient, it would be 2Y into W transpose Y. That is the kind of gradient you will get for this when you are taking a quadratic value. So this is how your gradient will be changing. Now, to take account of this factor 2, to make it simple so that you don't have to multiply anything for the computation of gradient, in the error function itself, we have introduced this particular factor half. I have already told earlier also this trick we did. And then you can see that this is the gradient expression. Again, with respect to if you consider the corresponding single dimensional differential calculus, so you are taking the gradient of this quadratic term, which is twice of this term, and then the gradient of this particular variable. So you get this, right? This is a coefficient. Now this is a constant term for Y. So the parameter is W. So you are taking gradient with respect to W. So this is the gradient value for this functional form, and you get this computation. I will stop just to show you this diagram that this is how you are giving more stringent criteria, and we will discuss about support vector machine. Actually, it is kind of an optimal linear classifier for the linear support vector machines, which tries to maximally separate two classes. Some kind of criteria we use it like that. So just to summarize, the algorithm goes like this, that we call it batch relaxation with margins because we were considering the whole training set. So it is the same thing what I just mentioned, that you start with any particular point in the parameter space, then you iterate following the steepest gradient principle, and by computing the gradient, where you have to consider the misclassified feature vectors only, and accordingly you compute the directions, and then you update W and go on updating it till you converge.